Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our third webinar this week on the T-levels for engineering and manufacturing. Just waiting for some more attendees to join, so I'll just be with you about in a couple of minutes' time. Thank you. So today's webinar, we will be talking about the engineering and manufacturing T-level, and we're going to look at the engineering and manufacturing process and control pathway. So as normal, please send any questions throughout the webinar in the question area. You're all being set to mute. And again, at the end of the webinar, we will be sharing our resources on our website. If you look in the handout section, you can download a copy of the presentation now. And for those who have been attending, you will be receiving a CPD certificate as well as the recording. As we are working from home, you might hear some background noises. I do apologise if my dog starts barking, but it is the agenda today. So just about the T-level itself, the guided learning hours, the manufacturing T-level pathway, looking at the engineering manufacturing process control specialism, specifications, website navigations, resources for the engineering manufacturing T-level, and the assessment. Then we're going to go into each specialism in more detail, so fitting assembly, machine and tool making, composite manufacturing, and fabrication welding. And then last of all, we're looking at how we support you with guidance and webinar, events, provider approval process, website support providers, and the textbook as well from Hodder Education. So just looking at the T-level team today, so you've got myself, Samantha Ashman, Technical Advisor for Engineering and Manufacturing, who's the lead on the T-level. You've also got my colleague on the call today, Jono Porter, also a Technical Advisor for Engineering and Manufacturing, looks after the apprenticeships and EPA as well as T-levels. And then again, our industry managers, Robert Stott and Scott Wilkins, who will closely work with our employers. Alison Whittle, our post-16 Technical Advisor, works with our HEIs. And Roderick Smith, our EQA manager at EAL, because it's a partnership with EAL. Unfortunately, Roderick cannot be with us today. What we'll do now, I'll pass on to my colleague, Jono Porter, who will go through the couple of slides. Thank you.
Thank you, Samantha. Thank you for that. And everybody's safe and well. Bill, that's Samantha. If you hear some background noise, I've got my daughter at home today, so I shall apologise. So what we're looking at now on this slide is the bird's eye view of the T-level programme, how this is made up. So the T-level is a full-time 2-year study programme, which carries UCAS points equivalent to 3 A-levels, and it covers practical skills, knowledge in specialist occupational areas. The programme is broken up into 2 halves. So let's look at the dark blue side, the dark blue in the left-hand side, which is the core. The guided learning hours for this is 680, which is a lot more than your normal study programme. There are 3 assessments which are in year 1. These are paper 1, maths and science, paper 2, which is the engineering concept, and also we have the employer set project. The assessment is externally set marked exam with the employer set project. So moving on to the right hand side in the light blue is the occupational specialism, which is also 680 guided learning hours on year 2. This is graded pass, merit and distinction. The assessment is a synoptic assignment covering practical skills and applied knowledge. Part of the T-level programme, learners are expected to undertake industry placement, which is a minimum of 45 days, which can be undertaken with 2 employers. Learners also have not achieved the grade 4 English and Maths can continue studying on the T-level programme as part of the condition of funding. And like all study programmes, also learners will be expected to do tutorials, employability skills, and enrichment of part of their study programme over the 2 years. Next slide, please, Sam. So what we're looking at is an overview of the engineering T-level. So we have the engineering core component, which is 8730. Regardless of whatever pathway the learners choose, they will do the same core component. Under the core, we have the 3 pathways, which are maintenance, installation, and repair, and the component number is 8712. We also have engineering, manufacturing, processing, and control, and the component number for this one is 8713. This is the one which we're going to be focused on today. And then we have the design and development, and the component number for this one is 8714. Learners must complete the engineering core and 1 occupational specialism within our pathway. Next slide, please, Sam. So on this slide, we can see the pathways for the engineering, manufacturing, process and control, which is 8713. Throughout this presentation, you might hear us refer to this one as MPC. So under this pathway, there are 4 OSs which sit under this, and these are Fitting and Assembly Technologies, which is 8713-31, Machine and Toolmaking Technologies, which is 8713-32, Composite Manufacturing Technologies, which is 8713-33, and the last one on this pathway is Fabrication and Welding, which is 8713-34. And these are the ones that make up the 4 occupational specialism within the MPC. Next slide, please, Sam. So this slide is showing the registration information for the MPC. So when registering learners for the MPC pathway, you must register them on the core first, which is 8730-13, followed after the chosen OS. So for example, this could be 8713-31, which is the Fitting and Assembly Technologies. So again, register the core first and the OS after. Next slide, please, Sam. So on this slide, this is showing 17 units which make up the core for the 3 chosen pathways. So as you can see on screen, the big hitters there are the Unit 4, the Maths, and Unit 5, which is the Science, which both carry 90 guided learning hours. When you go to the City and Guilds web page, then go to Teaching Resources, there's some supporting teaching resources what can help you prepare learners for their programme. So we have PowerPoints, schemes of work, worksheets, and multiple choice questions. And these are there to aid with delivery for the core components. Next slide, please, Sam. So we are now looking at the specification handbook for each pathway for the MPC. The MPC handbook is the one in the centre of the screen. We have a link on the top right hand corner which will take you to these handbooks. When using the handbooks, please check that you're using the most up-to-date version. So the ones on the screen for the 3 different specifications, these are showing version 1.1. Next slide, please, Sam. So this slide is showing how to navigate to the qualification handbook for the MPC. So the first thing to do is go onto the City and Guilds website or the homepage where you'll find the search bar. In the search bar, type in the 4-digit number. So for this case, will be the MPC, which is 8713. Then click on the red icon which says search. When the screen loads up, click on the T-level qualification for the MPC link, which will then take you to obviously go into the bottom of the screen you can see the arrow which is pointing to the link. This will then take you to the MPC pathway, which will show you the key information and documentation to aid with delivery. Next slide, please, Sam. The other way which you could do this is to go on the City and Guilds homepage again, and please see the image on the right-hand side of the screen, which shows T levels. Hover over this, and underneath it will show the Resource Hub. Click on the Resource Hub, which will then take you to the Resource Hub Support Hub page, which you can see on the left-hand side of the slide. Then this will greet you to some drop-down boxes or menus. The drop-down boxes will need to be selected, so you can pick the specification centre documentation documents that needs to be selected for the chosen T level, which in this case will be the manufacturing process and control. Also, on this web page, you will see supportive materials to help with delivery. Next, please, Sam. So on the link, the previous link before, the image on the right-hand side of the screen, this is the landing page for the MPC pathway. And when you click on the grey tab, which says Documents, this will show two drop-down boxes in red. The first drop-down box is the assessment material for all of the 4 OSs, which are fitting and assembly, machining and toolmaking, composite manufacturing, fabrication and welding. And a second drop-down box, this will show the handbook specification for the MPC, which you can see on the left-hand side of the screen. Again, always check to make sure you're using the latest version. Next slide, please, Sam. So now we're looking at the physical resources for the OS, which can be found on page 13 and onwards. So for the OS resources, for the pathway MPC, we have some common resources. So some of the resources you can use is PPE, hand tools, portable power tools, measuring devices. And underneath, we have the physical resources for the fitting and assembly. Just to touch on some of the physical resources, which are a range of ferrous and non-ferrous materials, tools and equipment, hand tools, spanners, pliers, hammers, and files. We've got power tools on there, measuring equipment. To the right-hand side, this shows the physical resources for the machining and tool making and follows the same principles. Next slide, please, Sam. This slide is showing the composite and fabrication and welding physical resources. So again, touching on some of the key resources for fabrication and welding, which you can see on your right-hand side of the screen. We have specialist PPE equipment, welding helmets, welding jackets, welding gauntlets, different types of materials, could be ferrous, non-ferrous, and also you'll need some obviously different types of welding machines, such as TIG and MIG machines. And again, also showing the tools and equipment needed. Next slide, please, Sam. So on page 20 within the handbook shows the assessment for the MPC pathway. This shows a breakdown for each component. So for the core, it's showing the 3 assessment components, the method of assessment, the duration, the marks, the weighting, and also how it's being graded. So in this case, this one is being graded A star to E. And below that shows the same title information for the 4 OSs. The duration for each OS is slightly different. So for the fitter, you can see the duration for that is 25 hours, 15 minutes. Machining is 25 hours, 15 minutes. The composite is 24 hours, 15 minutes. And for the fabrication and welding is 26 hours, 15 minutes. The grading awarded for these OSs are pass, merit, and distinction. Next slide, please, Sam. I shall now pass you over to Samantha to take you through the rest of the presentation. Thank you, Samantha.
Thank you, Jono, for going through that. So now just going to look at the employer set project for manufacturing process and control. So the employer set project for manufacturing process control, you can see on the screen now, it's going to be split into 4 tasks, and each task has got between a research, report, a design and a presentation. The total hours to complete this employer set project is 15.5 hours, 15.5 hours. Within that hours, you can see the marks made available. So for researching is 15 marks, for design is 24 marks, etc. The learners do get additional 9 marks allocated, and that's using maths, English and digital skills throughout tasks 1 to 4. So if they use engineering terminology and show calculations correctly using formulas, they will actually get that extra marks allocated. So the employer set project is out of 90 marks. Regarding marking this, City and Girls will be marking this employer set project, but as you can see, regarding the mark bands, AO2 applying knowledge and skills is a maximum amount of 50%. And again, this is applying principles and ideas into context using the brief as well, and solving appropriate tasks as well. As you can see with the 10% mark, and where those 9 extra marks come from, it comes from AO4, and that is using the maths, English and digital skills. So using correct terminology, abbreviation, measurements, etc. So as you can see, the different types of grading is allocated per part, and also different types of assessment weighting as well. If you look at an example for the employer set project, and this is available under 8730 on our website, the example for the employer set project for manufacturing process and control is to make a jig to drill holes in the screw identified on that screen. So as you can see, the employer gives you employer information about who the employer is, tells you what they need to do, what the project is, and how it should be completed as well. So what on this project is that the current arrangement is the standard in a V block and a drilling hole using a center drill. However, sometimes the drill holes is out of positioning and also does not go straight through as well. So the nut goes in the wrong place when doing that split pin. So therefore it gives it easy increase in scrap rate material and also taking time to complete those tasks. So what the learners will need to do, look at the engineering drawings supplied. So there's 3 engineering drawings supplied on this task. This is the main assembly one. And what they will need to do is create and design a drill jig so they can drill that hole in the right place at the all time. So in other words, every single drill piece is always completed. Again, that was understanding for the planning, designing and presentation method as well. It's not a practical assessment, so there's no need to be in the workshop for this. It's just taking what they've learned in the concept throughout the core units and put it into practice. So that will just give you a quick overview of the employer set project. So what we're going to do now, we're going to look at the practical assessments in the occupational specialisms. So as previously said, it's 90 marks for the practical assignment, and there's a different variety of occupational specialist durations. So they go from 24 hours and 15 minutes to 26 hours and 15. And it's making sure that the learner's on the right pathway, completing the right assessment and right time. With all these assessments, City and Girls will be setting these assessments. You will be the learners will be taking part, you will be marking them, and we will externally moderate them. And again, we will grade this from pass, merit and distinction. And it's always based on the project brief. There is different individual tasks that's mapped to the performance outcomes and different weightings. So each occupational specialism has different weightings and performance criteria. If you joined our webinars this week, you'll notice that design, development and maintenance, installation and repair has the same weighting per occupational specialism. This unit is totally different. This outcome is totally different, and we'll go through the different performance outcomes in a minute. We've also got that mark scheme as well to affect that individual performance, and again that is banded and weighted per those tasks as well. So what we're going to look at is fitting and assembly technologies. So fitting assembly technologies, for every single version, so with series 1, series 2, etc., will always be the same performance outcome. So as you can see, the maximum mark on the fitting assembly is 27%, and that is on PO4. So in other words, produce relevant products and outcomes requirements using the context materials for a fitting and assembly technology method. And again, in the knowledge and skills set, we've got between disassemble, assemble components, assemblers to fix and install components, carry out cutting, sawing, drilling and fitting accurately to produce shapes and profiles to meet a specification. As you see on this one, we've got a bit of communications down at the bottom. So in other words, the handover section. So in other words, when we're handing over the final completed production task to the actual supervisor, and that's weighted at 16%. For planning, we're weighting at 20%. So within that 20% area, identifying the brief, what type of tools they're going to need, what type of equipment they're going to need, and also how they're going to measure and mark out the component to that specification so they eliminate the waste. For further information regarding these, you can actually see these in the specifications. And this is on page 33 onwards. So on page 33 onwards for fitting and assembly, as you can see, the learner is going to be analysing, planning, producing, supporting the delivery, so the evaluating and then communication. And the assessment themes that they're going to be marked against is about health and safety, planning and preparation, production, quality review and evaluation. So looking at the specification in a bit more detail, this is on page 84 onwards for fitting and assembly. And what you can see is there that it's got knowledge and skills. So i.e. it's based on the apprenticeship standards. So the knowledge is the part 1, and anything that we're going to assess on the synoptic assignment is on part 2 to 6. That's where we've got that analysing, plan, etc. And again, this is understanding that legal regulatory requirements, quality inspection, using drawing tools, planning preparation and communication as well. So how to interpret the knowledge section, so that's on page 86 onwards. You've got the learning outcomes. So the learning outcome says planning, preparing and implementation, manufacturing process activities. Within the range, they need to know about the planning, the technical information, the scale of work and the cost of breakdown and other factors. Everything in that range must be covered with the learners. So there's nothing where it should not be taken out as well. And what that requires to within that range is something to do with what do learners need to learn, and that's identified in the salmon box down at the bottom. And again, this is the primary purpose of sections to support the delivery of the context and also in relation to what depth and breadth the subject should be taught. So in other words, the technical information needs to achieve specific outcomes, for example. Anything in the grey box relates to skills. Unfortunately, on this one, there's no skills allocated, but if the criteria has got some skills, then we'll map it to the English, maths and digital skills. So interpreting the practical assessment, the practical skill, this is on page 96 onwards. So in this learning outcome, we've got 4.3 and need to carry out cutting, drilling, sawing, fitting accurately to produce shapes and profiles to meet specification. In the range, we've got the types of methods, the types of materials, types of assemblies, and the technical documentation that needs to be cleared. In the salmon box this time, it's now what do the learners need to demonstrate? And this demonstration is through their practical skills and also their final synoptic assessment. So in other words, setting up tool and equipment to carry out cutting, drilling, sawing and fitting activities, using hand and machine cutting tools to manipulate material into shape and profiles. So as you can see, they are the types of tasks that they're going to be assessed on as well, and how can they perform in that area. In the grey box regarding skills, this is now been identified, and it's all to do with the math skills. So MC relates to the math competency core skills. So math skills 1 to 5. So on the screen now, you should see the fitting assembly technology brief. This has been completed as a sample assessment, and this is available under 8713. And under 8713, you'll see the learner work for a pass grade and a, which we call a threshold learner work, and a distinction learner work. So on this fitting assembly technology, there have been identified that the learner needs to produce a drill jig assembly. So what they are required to do is create that drill jig assembly to the actual specification and to the engineering drawings. Quality test the drill jig's output and adjust the drill jig as needed. Produce a sample drill part for quality checking. Evaluate the processes and present your finding to a supervisor in a handover meeting with an allocation of 25 hours and 15 minutes. For the 25 hours and 15 minutes, you've got task 1, which is 3 hours, task 2, which is 18 hours, and task 3 is 4 hours and 15 minutes. Again, these are working under supervised conditions, and again, breaks can be taken out, and again, making sure that the workshop is fully locked and the candidates are vacated once the breaks begin. So for the planning section, the candidate is going to analyse the brief and technical information and produce the resources necessary to produce that drill jigs for the actual engineering drawings, produce a risk assessment, produce a method statement, create a work plan, produce some quality check sheets, and also calibrate the measuring equipment as well. For task 2 is the production section. So production is preparing the work area, produce a drill jig assembly using both hand tools and workshop equipment machinery, commission the assembly and complete the commissioning checklist, and then reinstate the work area. So in other words, the resource is going to require some DTI, some calipers, some go-no gauges, and a full range of PPE as well. And again, for the material, we're using low carbon mild steel plate, mild steel locating rods, and bolts, dowels, and pressure fits buses as well. For the quality review, the 3A is to carry out the quality checks to making sure that that drill jig is being produced at quality standards, and also doing that sample drill part as well. For the evaluation, in other words, evaluating how they've completed that task and just writing a general job report. Other words, explanation of quality checks, what they've drilled, what the concession lists are, evaluate for fitness for purpose, and do they need to do any improvements or adaptations. And then the handover is where you will expect to see the quality inspection report, the completed drill assembly, and the sample drill part as well. So now we're going to look at machining and tool making. So machining and tool making performance outcomes, there is 27 marks allocated for the production, 17% allocation for the interpretation requirements, and then communications at 16%. And again, for the production part, using different types of machining tool equipment to create a job as well. Again, some planning, again, checking material, preparing the work area, and measuring and marking out components as well. And that's been allocated at 21% weighting. So within the specification on page 33 onwards, again, it's exactly the same as the previous one. So again, the assessment themes that we've been marking to will be health and safety, planning and preparation, production, and quality review and evaluation. So the specification for machine and tool making is on page 109. The knowledge is on page 111, and the practical skills on page 121. Again, it's exactly the same now interpreted that part of the specification, just like we've done for fitting assembly. So with the machine and tool making assessment, this is producing a bearing assembly. And again, with this bearing assembly, the learner's got to use manual and pre-programmed CNC machines to manufacture it. Again, each part for the bearing assembly, you've got parts 1, 2, and 3. So part 1 is the bearing housing, part 2 is the shoulder shaft, and part 3 is the top hat bearing. Again, this will allocate an hours to complete that practical assessment of 18 hours, and the allocated time to complete this fully is 25 hours and 15 minutes. So within the 3 tasks, you've got planning. So in other words, producing a brief, producing a method statement, producing a commission checklist, and production. So the learners will not need access to manual lathes and CNC lathes. And again, they will need the access to measuring equipment such as calipers, go-no gauges, DTIs, etc. Part of this part, they need some anti-corrosion surface treatment, especially for the back bearing housing. So they need some degreasers, some lubricants, some rust protection spray, or some light tools. And there's some examples that we need. And again, the material for the shoulder shaft is going to be made out of low carbon mild steel. The bearing housing is low carbon mild steel, and the top hat bearing is going to be made out of nylon rod. So again, for the quality review, carry out a full quality inspection, using the recording file using the quality sheet, evaluate what they've completed, so completing the job report, and then handing over. So the handed over would be a completed bearing assembly and the quality inspection report, as well as the actual documentation as well. So I'm going to look at now the pathway for composite manufacturing. So as you can see with composite manufacturing, the performance outcome is very high. And this is regarding on the production section, that's weighted at 43%. And again, with this 43%, the learners need to make molds, need to laminate the required production, and also cure the process as well. Again, supporting delivery, other words, risk assessments, techniques, etc. is PO5 identified at 10%, and then the planning is also identified at 28%. So the practical for the composite manufacturing is the highest mark that can be allocated at 43% of that assessment. Exactly as the same assessment themes has been identified across the other occupational specialisms. And again, externally set, internally marked, and externally moderated. So the specification for composite manufacturing is on page 137 onwards. The knowledge is on page 139, and the practical skills is on page 152. So the exemplar for the composite manufacturing technology assignment brief is that they are working in a composite materials technician in a large-scale composite fabrication facility. They need to create a production process to create a small batch of 100 parts per batch and production of the composite component. And what they have been tasked to do is produce an assembly block or spacer block within the aerospace industry to ensure the correct spacing of wing skins in a jig during manufacturing process. Each component has a number of plies which are either laid up or plated onto a core material. And for their requirement to do that assembly, They need to create a sample spacer block assembly using specified composite material and a vacuum bed. They need to perform in-production quality checks. They need to do the quality checks on the finished spacer block assembly. They need to evaluate. They need to identify attributes and faults, and also record and present the findings with an allocation of 24 hours and 15 minutes. And task 2 is identified as 16 hours to complete that practical assessment. So with task 1, they are planning, like any other practical assessments. On task 2B, they're going to be constructing a spacer block, so they need to do some marking out, some laying up, some curing and some demolding. And for that part of it, they need to use a twill weave carbon epoxy prepreg composite material. And they also have to use a closed core foam sheet. And when they're demolding equipment, they need to use demolding wedges, trimmers, finishers and measuring equipment. And the laminated consumables must include peel prive, breathe fabric, tacky tape, bagging film and vacuum breech units. And again, curing equipment is required to complete this assessment. For task 2A is that preparing that mould. So they get allocated time to prepare that mould. And again, using the mould, creating the mould itself, cleaning supplies and tools, release and releasing agencies and appropriate PPE to create that mould. With task 2C, you've got the preparation of the work area for the spacer block. So this is assembly. So you need to make sure that it's been bonded, it's cured and it's been trimmed and finished. And then when the mold has been taken out, then need to look at the defects identified. So task 3A, looking at defects. And again, carry out defects identification inspection of prefabricated sample. So in other words, anything that's been in that sample has got any defects, need to write about it and suggest process that should be introduced to modify or prevent defects in the future. With task 3B, they've got that quality review recording processes, and task 3C is the handover, and that should be the completed spacer block assembly and the quality inspection plot with any defects that's been identified. For fabrication and welding is the last occupational specialism in this pathway. So fabrication and welding, you've got a PO4, which is rated at 34%. So using acrylics to cut shapes, drills, forging, fabricating and welding techniques. And then again, analyzing is identified at 13%, where communication techniques is identified at 12%. On page 33 onwards, you can see the assessment themes. So this one is health and safety, plan and preparation, production assembly, quality test review and evaluation. For the fabrication and welding, the specification is on page 166 onwards, knowledge on page 168, and practical skills on page 176. So with the fabrication and welding one, they're going to make this anchor, and they need to manufacture the stock, the crown, the shank, the flute and support. And again, they need to do some non-destructive testing as well. The chains and the shackle will be supplied to the learners, so they will not need to make those. And that's a total hours of 26 hours and 15 minutes, with a task 2 rating at 20 hours. So with the planning section, again, creating a hot permit work, a method statement, calibration checks on the equipment, risk assessments, detailed work for fabricating and welding and testing, a cutting list, and a quality check sheet. In production, the learners need to use 2 different types of welding techniques. So from TIG, MIG, MAG, and MMA, they need to use different types of cutting equipment, abrasive equipment, forging equipment, and drilling equipment as well. Again, the material is going to be a 6mm mild steel plate, 6mm mild steel round bar, 10mm mild steel flat bar, and then the chain, the shackle, and the pin are going to be prefabricated for the learners. So on task 3A, they're going to do that quality review and testing. So in other words, do that non-destructive testing, and they can use different types of non-destructive testing to test those different welds. Again, they've got the evaluation and recording section, 800 words, and then the handing over, which is the complete anchor and the quality inspection report. So when marking any of these occupational specialist assessments, you've got to look at the marking grid, and each marking grid is supplied per OS, but this is an example from the fabrication and welding. So on the fabrication welding, looking at assessment theme, health and safety. So the first one right at the beginning. So assessment theme, health and safety, we're looking at task 1, task 2, task 3A, and task 3C. And we're expecting to see information from those. As you can see in the indicative content, it just tells you what's going to be expected and what you're going to expect to see. And also the completion of the evaluation section as well. So within that mark band for the assessment, health and safety themes, you've got risk assessments 1 to 4, which is basics and cover the main, not all risk has been covered, so you could give it a grade 1 for grade 2, for example, mark 2. If a risk assessment is really detailed enough and it's got some mitigation methods identified, but it's not all being taken into account, you could give it a grade 5 or 6 or mark 5 or 6. And if you're thinking that the risk assessment is thoroughly being identified, all the risk, all it has been identified, and any mitigations, you could give them the marks between 9 and 12. Again, if you're used to our technical program delivery, our 1145, they are holistically assessed. So for example, so on this marking grade, you could allocate the learner work of a grade 5, so 5 out of 12. Once you add all the marks up together, it will come out with an overall grade of pass, merit, and distinction. So how we can support you, again, through these webinars that's been coming up on a regular basis, face-to-face, network events, through our website, or blended communication approach. So support and guidance, we've got timelines, so those in pre-delivery or post-delivery, you can see what's happening throughout the year. Provider focus groups, so providers getting involved in completing surveys for us regarding latest assessments. If you've got employers who like to work with City and Guilds, then please come and join our employer industry board. If you're not already signed up to, then please do sign up on the T-level landing page regarding our e-bulletin, where you get an update regarding the qualification. Specifications available across all our sites, and again through our resource hub section. Learner flyers for recruitment. So again, if you're thinking about your next year's learners, so think about what type of recruitment process, and again the learner flyers. And again, you've got myself and Jono, your dedicated technical advisors on this qualification. As always, we've got the events and webinars that's always happening, and face-to-face events. Everything will be on our T-level homepage under engineering and manufacturing, and again under our events and networking webinar section. Any previous recordings or any of this recording will be on our engineering dedicated go-to channel. And again, it's not just for T-level, it's got apprenticeships, it's got other qualifications such as 1145, and also the webinar that we've done previously this week. And again, we've got the next webinar coming up regarding the curriculum plans and different types of delivery model, and that will be on the 18th of January. As always, we're there to support providers in delivery, so you've got a couple of links in there. And again, if you're not already engaged with the Education Training Foundation, then I do recommend you get engaged with those. If they've got loads of events coming up, and latest events is such as visiting sites as well, to see how T-levels can support learners in their future career and how it can help for industrial placements as well. Coming soon is the engineering textbook, published around about February, March time, or spring 2023. The print book is at £34 and an e-book is at £11. What I do recommend, if you need to see that printed book or get a sample, get a validation copy, then go and speak to Gemma Simpson at Adder Education. Her email address is on there. And again, it can be used for delivery staff as well as students as well. As always, looking for T-level associates. So again, moderating these occupational specialism, or either marking the core exam, the employer set project. Again, these are the different association roles that we have got to go in for City and Girls. So if you are interested, then do get in touch with myself or visit our associate vacancy website. So I'd like to say thank you for joining us this afternoon on a Friday. Hope you have a lovely weekend. Any questions, then do get in touch with us, and we'll have a look through the questions that's come through on the chat now. Thank you. So I've got a question that's come through. It's good afternoon. Are the specialist example assessment likely to be the actual assessments used, or are they likely to be changed? Now, these are sample assessments, so they will be changing. The occupational specialisms, what you'll see, so such as planning, providing, performing, quality review, those key tasks, so like task 1, 2, task 3, they will be the similar one. So you'll see them going throughout the series as well. What I do recommend is that you do check on our website to see how the different assessments are. When we release the assessments, you will also get, so previous series, you'll also see those as well. Another one what's just come through, are they released at the Easter the following year? Yes, they are. As again, please always look at our key date schedule, which is in our resource hub page, and you'll see when the assessments for engineering and manufacturing is going to be released, and you'll also get your duration time as well. So just keep updated on the key date schedule as well. Any other questions before we end this webinar? No, nothing coming through. Okay then, so thank you for joining us. Have a lovely weekend, and we'll hope to see you soon on our next webinar. Thank you.